Hi, this is Mark Levy, your sourdough simpleton. Today we're going to be making pita bread. That's the round pocket bread that is used for falafel or chicken or all kinds of things, very popular in the Middle East or Middle Eastern cuisine. The whole process is going to take us a little bit more than 2.5 hours, maybe 3 overall. Let's see how it goes today. Now, to set this up, we needed a good active starter for this. So last night I took some of my dormant starter. I took 60 grams of starter, 120 of water, and 120 of flour. That's a 1:2:2 ratio. And I put that together and let it sit overnight. In the morning, that had doubled, more than doubled actually, and did very well. I then took that starter and took 200 grams of that starter with 200 grams of water and 200 grams of flour, a 1:1:1 ratio. That rises much faster. I put that up about 6:30 this morning, and by 10 o'clock, it had pretty much over doubled. And that's where we are now. So here we go. This is everything that you're going to need right in front of me. We're going to start with the starter, which as you can see is quite full. This started out down there earlier today. And we're going to take 500 grams of starter. Now, I looked on the internet and looked around for different kinds of recipes for pita, and a lot of them use starter, but they would let the starter sit for a long time in the flour before making the pita. So I said to myself, well, if you can use a little bit of starter, why not use a lot of starter? So that's why we're using a lot of starter. This really cuts the time necessary in preparation significantly. And most of the work was done while I was sleeping, quite frankly. So we're going for a total of 500 grams of an active starter. And we'll put that into our mixing bowl. Come on. There we go. 500 grams of active starter in the mixing bowl. To that, we're going to be adding some water. This is 118 grams of filtered water at room temperature. And I'm just going to mix that up a little bit just to dissolve the starter, but not much. Don't really have to do too much. We're going to add flour. This is 360 grams, roughly 3 cups of bread flour. This is high gluten bread flour. We're going to add some olive oil to this. This is 14 grams of extra virgin olive oil. And of course, that all important salt, 5 grams non-iodized salt. You can use kosher salt if you like, or sea salt, but it's 5 grams. Don't give me a volume measurement for that one. We've been through that before. Now, I'm going to take my mixer, put this on the bowl, and start this mixing on low for about maybe 3 minutes or so. We'll give it about 3 minutes for it to come together, and then we'll be back after that. See you then. Okay, so it's been about 3 minutes, and the dough is starting to come together. We're now going to increase the speed to a moderate speed, medium speed, and we're going to let it knead for about 5 more minutes. At the end of the 5 minutes, the dough should be clinging to the dough hook, and the edges of the bowl should be clear. We'll see you after that. So it's been about 5 minutes now, and you can take a look and see that the dough is sticking to the hook. The sides of the bowl are clear, and when we stop it and take a look, the dough is not sticky to the touch. It just, you push in a hole and it stays there. And that's really where we want this dough right now. So what we're going to do is take this dough off of the hook. And we're going to put it onto a lightly floured surface. And just give it a couple of quick manual kneads. Yeah, I think you can see that okay. Just have it come together. Now, if you didn't have a mixer and you want to do this by hand, you certainly can mix it together using a dough whisk or whatever to get the dough together, and then knead it by hand until it's a nice, compliance, pliable dough, and that's really what we're looking for here. So having mixed it up nicely, and just a couple of quick kneads to get it formed into a pretty little ball, like that. We're going to take the dough hook off of there. Take our, hello. Yeah, it'll come off. I'll take it off later. Put a little bit of oil spray into our bowl. Put the dough into the bowl. And we're going to cover this with saran and let it sit for about 2 hours. And that will give it a chance to rise. So we'll see you back here in about 2 hours, give or take, when it's time to bake the pita. Now, about an hour of the way into this 2 hours, I want you to preheat your oven. Now, I have in this oven currently nothing. It was there, but my wife took it out. We're going to put a pizza stone in the oven, and we're going to heat that for about at least an hour at 500 degrees. If you don't have a pizza stone, you can use a sheet pan, perfectly dark colored sheet pan, or you can use a cast iron, frying pan. But the object here is to have a surface which is very hot and which will retain the heat. So just using a cookie sheet really doesn't retain the heat as well. But that's what we're going to be doing over the course of the 2 hours while this dough is rising. I usually give it about an hour to come to full temperature, make sure that stone is really hot. So we'll see you in about 2 hours. Well, I know I said it would be 2 hours, but as you can see by the clock, it's only been an hour and a half. And the dough is more than doubled in size. So now let's get on with the business of making the pita. So I've positioned the camera so that you can see a little bit better what's going to happen here. We're going to take the dough out. And the dough is a nice, resilient, soft dough. Now, if you were paying attention, for all you math majors, when we started out, we used 500 grams of starter, 360 of flour, 118 of water, 14 of olive oil, and 5 of salt. If you add that together and you allow for a little bit of bobble in the 1 or 2 grams here or there, you're going to get 1,000 grams. We're going to make this into 8 pieces. Those pieces each are going to be approximately 125 grams, and that's going to be the size of our final pita. So we're going to do that by cutting this into halves, into quarters, and then into eighths. I'm just using a bench scraper to roughly do this. Now, because I'm a bit crazy and a little bit compulsive, we're going to take each of these wedges that we have and weigh it. And hopefully it'll come out to about 125 grams. If not, we can alter it one way or another till we get the right amount of weight. So, here's the first one. And you'll see it's 154 grams. So I'm going to take a little bit off of that. Until we get the 125. Or close. I mean, it can be 126, 127, but in that neighborhood. We're going to make this, gotta get so you can see it, make this into a little ball, like that, and we're going to set this aside on a cookie sheet. I'll show you that in a second. Now the next one, This actually weighs a little bit light, so we'll put some of the pieces back from the one that we cut off the other one. And it's 125. Once again, we'll work this into a little ball and we'll set it aside on the cookie sheet. Let me show you that. So here we have a sheet pan with some parchment paper on it, and we're going to put our little balls of pita dough on here to rest while we prepare all the other ones. When you put it on here, you want to cover it with a very light tea towel so it doesn't dry out. Now I'm going to go ahead and roll the other ones up, and then we'll be back to do some pita making. So now we've finished making the 6 balls of dough for the pita, and it's time to roll one, at least the first one out for you. So taking the first ball, we'll put it down in the center of this sheet, and this is a nice sheet that has circles drawn on it so you know about where it is. Now I will press this out, this dough out, which it does very nicely to get it close to the 6-inch roll, 6-inch circle. And then I'm going to use a rolling pin which has 1/4-inch spacers on it to take it out to its full size. And you want to make it as close to a circle as possible. It doesn't have to be exact, but certainly you want it as close to a circle as possible, and about 6 inches all the way around and 1/4 inch thick. Now if you don't have spacers like this, you can certainly use a regular rolling pin and be very careful, or you can put some guides, which we had talked about back on the cracker video about how to make some guides for your rolling pins if you don't have this kind of a pin, or I'll go ahead and put a link to this pin on the information for this video. So here we have a perfect circle. Now it's time to put it in the oven. Here we go. So we're going to take the pita that we just rolled out. We're going to flip it onto the hot stone and let it go for about 3.5 minutes. So while one pita is baking, you can roll out the next pita so that you're ready. If you roll them out ahead of time, they may dry out. So I strongly advise rolling them out one at a time. You've got a couple of minutes while one is baking to get it to size and roll it out. It's really a very relaxing period of time to do that. So the time involved for each pita is between 3.5 to 4 minutes on the pizza stone. You're going to have to gauge it for yourself for how you do it and how your oven temperature is, but you'll know that it's done when it's fully inflated. Doesn't get very brown, but it certainly is done, and it certainly is tasty. Now we'll take that out by sliding it onto a pizza peel. It does not stick at all, and there's nothing transferred from the stone. Remember while you're doing this that the stone does have to retain its heat. So if you open the oven for a while and then close it again, give the stone a chance to regain its heat. And you can go ahead and prep the next pita while one is cooking. Just give it a little spread out with your hands, approximating the right size. Take a rolling pin to make it nice and even, and you should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and make the rest of these pitas and then show you the result. Be back in a few. So after a couple of hours baking, we now have these 8 beautiful homemade sourdough pitas, and they are as delicious as they look. Let me show you what I'm going to sacrifice one for the camera. We'll see how it looks inside. So if we rip this open, you'll see the pocket that's in there. This is very hot, so it's hard to handle, but there's a nice pocket. It is soft, it is delicious, It's a wonderful pita. So I hope you've enjoyed this video about making pita with sourdough starter in about maybe 3 hours. Now remember, you do have to have an active starter to do this, and that may have to rise overnight. And it's a straightforward recipe. I think you can see that. I'll put the recipe on the website, which is www.sourdoughsimpleton.com, along with the various tools that we use in case you want to get those for yourself. In the meantime, let's keep baking. Let's keep doing sourdough. Let me hear from you on the website, sourdoughsimpleton.com, the YouTube channel, Sourdough Simpleton, or on Instagram at Sourdough Simpleton. Kind of makes it easy, doesn't it? We'll see you next time. Let me hear from you what you want to hear from the world of sourdough. Bye-bye.